The creative super team of Charles Soules and Steve McNiven return to the world of the Man Without Fear one more time. But this is an older Matt Murdock like you've never seen him before. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop into the pages of Daredevil Cold Day in Hell issue number 1, the kickoff to a brand new 3-part miniseries, and find out what happens next together, shall we? Alrighty then, so this first issue ends up throwing a lot at the reader in quick succession, so thankfully I'm here to walk you through it. We see Matt Murdock, a much more geriatric and broken down version of Matt than we've ever seen before, visiting a cemetery on Staten Island. He talks to one of the tombstones, and it's made abundantly clear that whoever this person is, he and Matt were very good friends at one point in time. He talks about the old days, about the battles they had, and how completely different the world is now. If you're like me, you probably jump to the conclusion he must be talking to Foggy Nelson, but when the camera ends up pulling back, we realize that Matt is at the grave of none other than his greatest foe, Wilson Grant Fisk. Wait, really? His middle name was Grant? Also, I really appreciate that his tombstone reads father, a husband, and king. Another thing we learn via this reminiscing session here is that Daredevil has been without his powers for a very long time, so much to the point he has been inactive in the large-scale super war that has been happening elsewhere in the universe. It seems that General Barton, no doubt Clint Barton Hawkeye, has been fighting it out with a group calling themselves the DBs. And believe it or not, in this issue we don't actually learn who or what the DBs are, but what we know for sure though is that they seem to be blamed for the destruction of the Brooklyn Bridge. In fact, New York in general looks a lot harder and rougher than it's ever been before, which is certainly saying something when we're talking about Marvel's New York. In fact, Matt ends up getting jumped by 2 street people. At first they ask if he has some change, and then when they see he's carrying a bunch of cash, they decide to take all of it for themselves. Now this situation could have gotten really ugly really quick, but even though Matt doesn't have his powers in this dark future, he is still a smooth talker. He manages to calm the guys down and tell them to leave just with the cash. He's even nice enough to offer them a place at the new soup kitchen he's running, Batlin' Jack's. After all, he's a blind guy, and wouldn't be able to tell apart 2 guys down on their luck from anyone else down on their luck right now in New York, which includes damn near everybody. Now, while the elderly Matt Murdock might have spared himself from a beating, it's clear that his pride was more than a little bruised in this situation. Back in the day, he would have been able to handle this problem with, well, his eyes closed. Now it's all he can do to keep his head above water and make a wave where he can, in this case actually feeding the downtrodden citizens of New York. Basically, Matt is doing all the works of a priest, even dressing like one, but not actually doing any religious preaching. And hey, speaking of God, and I certainly was, he sure does have a funny way of intervening in Matt's life when he least expects it. Outside, we see a group of soldiers escaping the subway tunnel, only for the whole thing to end up getting engulfed in a massive explosion. Matt doesn't know it at first, but this isn't any regular old bomb either. This is a dirty bomb that just so happens to be loaded with the very same chemical compound that took Matt's sight but gave him amazing heightened senses in the first place, though the return of his powers is certainly more than Matt bargained for. All the noise feels like his head is about to split wide open, but thankfully he remembers his training under Stick and is able to compose himself long enough to try and rescue people from the wreckage. Yes, it would seem for Daredevil, being a hero is like riding a bike, you never quite forget. Matt even gets brave enough to venture down below to try and investigate some heartbeats that are only getting fainter and fainter. You can imagine his surprise when down below he comes face to face with none other than an elderly Steve Rogers. It would seem in this dark future, Captain America has continued to fight the good fight, and that includes saving the life of a young girl who he says is central to this whole bombing plot. And because poor Cap is slowly but surely bleeding out due to the several pieces of rebarb that are currently sticking out of his torso right now, it looks like protecting this girl now falls to Daredevil. Matt flies into action and manages to do just that. In fact, we're treated to a very fun little page wherein we get to see his full acrobatic range on display as he escapes the crumbling tunnel, sadly much too late to rescue Steve Rogers, who ends up getting lost and assumedly dying in the collapse. Obviously, being reunited with his old friend and then losing him so quickly really lights a fire under Daredevil, Daredevil, who's ready to go after the perpetrators of this terrorist attack. What he ends up finding is 3 goons in hazmat suits loading up Captain America's shield. One guy in particular feels bold enough to take down his helmet while the others didn't. The implication is that whatever they did right here was to try and give people powers. Daredevil gives chase to these guys, but unfortunately he ends up losing them once they decide to take their vehicle off-road and through a shantytown. It's clearly been a very long time since Daredevil has gone full throttle like this, and all this leaping off buildings is pretty dangerous when you're this guy's age. So sadly the bad guys end up getting away, though it's after that we end up getting introduced to these guys' boss, an absolutely ancient looking man with the shake so bad he ends up putting acupuncture needles through his own body just to try and stop it. We don't actually learn this guy's name in the issue proper, but I think it's pretty obvious who he is from the context clues. He's obsessed with superheroes, comes alive at the thought of Daredevil returning, and makes several not so subtle references to targets. Yeah, this is almost certainly Bullseye, and the fact of which that the man who was once one of the greatest sharpshooters in the Marvel Universe now has the shakes is just kind of a genius bit of characterization. But it's not just Bullseye we are reintroduced here. We see whoever this guy may be. He's not alone, as he is actually keeping the emaciated body of Frank Castle the Punisher just nearly clinging to life in the other room with his arms and legs cut off. And of course the Punisher logo carved into his chest in case you didn't already know who that was supposed to be. Now as the comic comes to a close, Daredevil ends up suiting up one more time and hitting the streets, knowing that whatever this newest crisis is, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, and as it stands right now, Daredevil might actually be the only hope for Hell's Kitchen, maybe even all of New York. And so that was Daredevil Cold Day in Hell issue number 1, everybody, and ultimately I thought this was a pretty solid debut for this 3-part story. Again, dark futures, old man versions of your favorite heroes are certainly nothing new, but this seems to be a pretty fun spin on the old formula. I like that Soul didn't feel the need to bog us down with a bunch of world building and backstory for this new dark future. Instead, he kind of let the characters just speak for themselves. Apparently, this series has actually been in development for a very long time. They were supposed to do it right before COVID, so naturally that got derailed. And then Soul got very busy basically being the head honcho on the Marvel Star Wars comics. In fact, him and McNiven even teamed up again to do a Boba Fett story. And now the book is finally seeing the light of day. In fact, if you're interested, there's a really nice bit of making of in the back of this single issue that explains the more art-forward approach they took to this one. Basically, Steve Niven was allowed to go nuts and do whatever he wanted, and it shows, and I like it. Also, this is kind of the perfect time for Marvel to put out a brand new Charles Soule Daredevil story when we stop and consider Muse and a bunch of the stuff that Soule wrote for Daredevil is returning to prominence again thanks to the new TV show. Overall, I think I'd feel comfortable giving this one an 8 out of 10. Good stuff. We'll be very interested to see where it goes from here. Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel again, thanking you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out my Amazon link down in the description. Yes, that's right, the Cape Joel channel officially has its own Amazon storefront now. You can pick up a comic or anything else for that matter, and if you did, you'd really be helping me in the channel. So with that out of the way everyone, I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.